Welcome to this demonstration where we are going to show you how to configure CloudWatch unified agents to push logs and metrics from EC2 instance into CloudWatch. So the first thing we need to do is to actually create the configuration access that is required, which is the IAM role, which will give us access to enable EC2 instances send logs and metrics over into CloudWatch. So that's the first thing we are going to do. So to do that, we go straight into IAM, and under IAM we're going to create a role. So we'll go to roles, click on roles, and under roles we'll click on create role. So on clicking on create role, it's going to ask us what is the use case. It's actually an EC2 instance, so we'll click on EC2. There are other services here, but our focus is on EC2, so we'll click on EC2 and click on next. So every role is supposed to come with an IAM policy. So there's a specific policy that is already created within AWS, so we don't have to create the policy ourselves. We just search for the policy in the list of policy, and it is called the CloudWatch Agents Admin Policy. So I just pasted it here and it's popped up. So if you also type it, okay, it will pop up CloudWatch Agent. Yeah, that's it, admin policy. Okay, so I'll click on that, I'll tick on it, and I'll click next. So these are tags. We can as well leave this blank, or if you want to give it a name, but I want to leave it blank. Click on next. So here we are going to give our role a name. So for our role, we'll call it CloudWatch Unified Agent Role. So CW Unified Agent Role. So that's what we are going to title our role, and when we are done with that, we'll click on create role. So this will create the role. Now that we have the role created, the next thing we need to do is to go into the EC2 instance, install and configure the unified CloudWatch agent. So let's flip over into our console to start that configuration process. So now we are here in our console. We've logged into an EC2 instance where we want to configure the CloudWatch agent. So we're going to use the following steps to install the CloudWatch agent and configure it. So the first step for us is to download the agent installation and package and unzip it. So we're going to, from the book, we have a URL here and a command that does that for us, which I've pasted here. So we have wget and the URL from the AWS repository, more or less in S3. So when I hit the enter key here, it's going to download the zip file. So what is going to download is a very basic zip file that contains all we need to install and configure the CloudWatch agent. So if I do an ls here to show the list of files, you can see the CloudWatch agent has been downloaded. That's the zip file for the installation. The next step we need to do here is to actually unzip the file. So we use the unzip Linux command, unzip Amazon CloudWatch agent.zip. So it's gradually inflating it and it's done with the unzipping. So when the unzipping is done, we can still check and see. Okay, so it's actually done right here. So all the files are scattered here. We still have our zip file here. Okay, so let's go on. You can do it in various options. You could decide to, unzip it in a folder or however you want it to be, but to just keep this simple, we're unzipping it this way. So the next step we need to do is to run the install.sh file, which is more or less the installation file for the CloudWatch agents. So to run that, we use the bash // which helps to execute a shell script. Some options will do the sh command, but whichever one works out. So let's do the // install.sh. So this will install the CloudWatch agents in the machine. Please, let's take note of the user I'm using the root user here because sometimes the EC2 user might have permission issues, so I'm just using the root user for demonstration. It's good that you use the sudo command with the EC2 user or any user in the operating system. Yeah, so Now that we've run the install process, it has created the user group, it has also created the user. The next thing we need to do is to get into the installation and run the setup configuration wizard for CloudWatch agent. So the unified CloudWatch agent has a wizard process that we need to go through to configure the CloudWatch agent to be able to collect logs and metrics from the instance and send over into CloudWatch. So to do that, we need to navigate to a particular folder within the system, and the folder directory is cd/opt/AWS Amazon CloudWatch agent/bin. So that's the exact location where the agent was installed. And if we do an ls in this location, we're going to find a couple of files here. So the most important file to us here is the Amazon CloudWatch agent config wizard. So we're simply going to run that file almost the same way we ran the install.sh. So we do ./Amazon CloudWatch agent config wizard. Okay, so this is going to start the wizard configuration process. Now the first step here is to is going to ask us what operating system we are looking at. So the operating system option we are going to pick is the default, which is Linux, which is actually what we are using. Any option we are okay with, we hit the enter key. So we are okay with this option, we hit the enter key. The next is are you using an EC2 instance or an on-prem host? So we're using an EC2 instance here, and the default choice is 1. So we'll hit the enter key to move next. The next question is, which user are you planning to run the agent on? We're on the root user, so let's just use the root user. You can actually decide to use the CW agent user or any other user that you wish to use. So we'll go with the default choice and hit the enter key. Do you want to run status D? Now stats D is actually used for more of application metrics. We are not focused on that right here, so we're going to go with option no, which is for 2, and move to the next option. So the next thing here says, do you want to monitor metrics from collect D? Of course we want to, because collect D actually takes system metrics, so we'll leave the default choice as 1 and hit the enter key. The next is, do you want to monitor any host metrics, e.g. CPU, memory, or etc? Of course we want to, so we'll leave the option here, the default choice, which is 1, and hit the enter key. The next is, do you want to monitor CPU per core? It says additional CloudWatch charges may apply. At the moment, really don't want to do that because we're not going into detail that much. But if we want to go into details of what's going on within the EC2 instance, this is something cool to really activate. But at this point in time, we really don't need that. So we'll leave the default option, which is 1. Sorry, we'll change the option here to 2 because we really don't want to monitor CPU metrics per core. So we can make it 2 and hit the enter key because we don't want that activated. The default choice 1 is yes, but we want to do no. So the next question here says, do you want to add EC2 dimensions, image ID, instance type? Yes, of course we want to, because this is actually all the configurations and the information we need to understand and get as much information as we can about what's going on within the EC2 instance. And the default option is 1, which is yes, so we'll leave that as default and hit the enter key. So the next is, would you like to collect your metrics at high resolution? That means at what rate do you want the metrics to come, how fast? The highest time here is about 60 seconds, which is pretty much okay. But if your systems are very critical and you need to know what's happening at the shortest time possible, then option 1 will be the best, which is every single second. You also have option 2 and 3 for different specifications as you choose. But for now, we'll go with the default option, which is 4, and hit the enter key. Now the next is, which default metrics configuration do you want? So there are different types of metrics configuration here. For this sample, we'll take 2. It's a bit more detailed, it contains a lot more metrics. So we'll take the standard. We also have the advanced, and we have the basic. But for this step, we'll take option 2. and then the configuration is created. So if you scroll up a little bit, you're going to see like a JSON configuration that contains all that we've been talking about, all the questions we've been answering, and how it has generated a configuration file for us. So the next question is going to ask us is, are you satisfied with the above config? Note it can be manually customized after the wizard completes to add additional items. We're pretty much okay with it. We'll just go with yes, we're actually okay with this. So the next question is, do you have any existing CloudWatch agents? Because we know unified CloudWatch agent is the advanced of the normal CloudWatch agent. So it's trying to ask us if we have it installed so it can, import and migrate the configuration. We really don't have that installed, so we'll go with option 2, which is no. After that, do you want to monitor any log files? So this can be really important if you have, say, an Apache server, an Nginx server, a RabbitMQ server that is running within this machine, and you need to pick the log files, okay, information from the log files, and send them over to CloudWatch. We're not doing that at the moment, so we'll just go with no. But if you are doing that, you go with yes, and you have to put the path where the file exists so that CloudWatch agent, the unified CloudWatch agent, will pick the information from there and write them over into CloudWatch. So for this option, we'll go with no. And it's asking us, please check the above config again. Do you want to store them in SSM parameter store? So the SSM parameter store is supposed to help us, securely store it in case there's a failure. In case something happens, we can always, recover from that. But this is a very basic setup, so we can say no. And that's it. So we have finished the configuration of the CloudWatch agent. Now, when the configuration is finished, the next step you need to go is to start the agent. So when you start the agent, it's going to start picking up metrics from the EC2 instance and write it over into CloudWatch metrics. So for us to start the configuration, there is a script that will enable us to do that. There's a particular bash script. So I'll just copy that and paste it. Okay, sorry. Okay, so that's the configuration. So this is Amazon CloudWatch agent control. It's trying to configure it, so it's going to fetch the config on a file, the configuration file, which is config.json by default, which is a file we just created by default. So this is supposed to start the agent, and when the agent starts, it's going to start pushing metrics from the EC2 instance directly into CloudWatch. So when we paste that, we hit the enter key to start it running. There seems to be a problem. It says error running agent, error parsing a file. So most times there are some dependencies your CloudWatch agent requires to run appropriately. And for example, we have a dependency on collectd that we have not installed yet. So that's why we have this error. So it's important that we get to take note of that. So for us to fix this, we need to install collectd, and we have a command that will help us do that. So collectd also comes with other kind of dependencies, so we'll install those dependencies and collectd as accordingly. So we have yum install, epel release, and yum install collectd. Now the reason for this is because we said we want to use collectd to collect metrics. Okay, if we did not activate collectd, we will not need to install this. Same also with the statsd that we disabled. If we had enabled it, we would have there will be a requirement for us to install statsd for us to be able to run the CloudWatch agent and also collect the appropriate metrics that statsd collects. So let's try and install collectd and see. So we hit the enter key to start the installation process, and yeah, okay, it says no package as this. So let's do an update. Okay, It's saying Amazon Linux extras install. So we have to use this command. So this is the new command for installing this dependency. That's epl release. So let's run that command. Sudo Amazon Linux extras install epl. Okay. All right, so that's epl has successfully installed. So now let's try and install collect D, which is what we actually want to install from the beginning. So yum install collect D, enter. So it's going to try and install collect D right now. Okay, is this okay? We'll go with yes, because we want to install it. It's just roughly 2 megabytes, 2.1 megabytes. So okay, it says that it's trying to retrieve a key for Fedora. Is this okay? Yes. Okay, finally the collect D has been installed. So what we're going to do is that we're going to try to start the CloudWatch agent again and see. Linux can keep history of every command we type, so we can simply use the up arrow key and navigate back to the command we wrote for starting the agent, and here it is. So we're going to hit the enter key again to try and start it up, and yippee, it's successfully started. So you can see Amazon CloudWatch agent has already been stopped. It says that the service is actually started. It didn't show the error it showed us before. So this means that the service, a shortcut was actually created for the service with the same link, and a restart was also initiated on the service. So at the moment, it means that the CloudWatch agent has been installed, configured, and it has been started successfully. It's going to take a couple of minutes for the metrics to actually show on CloudWatch. So we'll pause it and wait for a while, and then we'll come back and see the metrics that has been pushed based on this configuration. Okay, so let's go over to CloudWatch and see the metrics that we have configured. So if you go over to CloudWatch here, oh, unfortunately we can't see the metrics. So I think the reason for that is because the role that we created was not attached into the EC2 instance. So let's quickly let's configure that. So this is the instance. I'll click on actions, go over to instance settings, no, under security, yeah, modify and attach, modify IAM role. So we'll click on that. At the moment the instance has no IAM role, so we're going to attach the IAM role we created before, which is the CW unified agent role. So CW unified agent role here, and click on save. So this will eventually give the instance the access to be able to write to CloudWatch. So let's give it a couple of seconds to see if it actually writes to CloudWatch. Now we can see that the CloudWatch agent has pushed the metrics over into a custom namespace. A group of metrics is actually grouped under what we call a namespace. So we can see this namespace was here initially, and now it's here called custom namespaces. So let's click on it, and we can see the dimensions we configured, different information around the EC2 instance. And when we click on the one of the dimensions, and we can see all the interesting information we can get from here. Now the information here is based on the configuration we choose, which is the standard configuration. We have the basic, we have standard, and we have the advanced configuration. So we can see something very interesting here too is it takes the name of the EC2 instance that you have configured. So it's very easy for you to know the instance. So you could have 50, 30, 40 instances, and with the names it's quite easy for you to know the instance with which the agent information and metrics is coming from. And you can see a bunch of interesting things here. So it shows you disk used percent, the disk inodes free, and you can also get information around pretty much a lot of things around your disk in this metrics. If we also come here, we can also see information about the IO time, and if we also come here, we can see information about memory usage. So thank you very much for listening, and in this demonstration I shall show us how to use Amazon EventBridge to create a rule that monitors EC2 Spot instances for pending interruptions that are going to occur and send an SNS notification. So the first step is to navigate to Amazon EventBridge. So to get to Amazon EventBridge, from the AWS Management Console, we move straight into Application Integrations, and under Application Integration we'll click on Amazon EventBridge. Now under Amazon EventBridge, the next thing we need to do is to create a rule. So we'll click on Create Rule, and we give the rule a name. So for our scenario, the name of the rule is going to be Spot Terminate Rule. Okay, so Spot Terminate Rule. Once that is done, we move to the next stage, which is the description. This is pretty much optional, so we really don't need to put a description. To define the pattern, which is the next option, we click on Event Pattern, and under Event Pattern we're going to click on Predefined Pattern by Service. Under the service provider, we're going to select AWS, and then the service name, which is EC2. So you can scroll down and look for EC2. Yeah, and that's it. And then what kind of event in EC2 do you want us to monitor and observe? Which is, for this scenario, we're going to do EC2 Spot instance interruption warning. So what this event does is that it warns you, or it can read when a Spot instance is going to be terminated and tell you before time, which is very valuable for you to know when you are using Spot instances. Now when that is done, the next thing is the event boss. So by default we have AWS as the event boss, and the rule is enabled by default. And next is the target, because when an event is triggered, there needs to be a target to receive the response of that event and act on it. So for our scenario, we're going to be using an SNS topic, which is going to send us an email notification of this EC2 instance that is about to be terminated because it is Spot. So from this target service, there are a lot of target services here, but our focus here is going to be on an SNS topic we have created before. So we'll click on SNS topic, and then we'll click on Spot Alert. So this is an SNS topic we already created initially, and we can check the book to see where you can create and how you can create SNS topics. Is straightforward. So the next thing here is the tags, which are pretty optional, but there's something else here. You can add more targets if you wish. So you can have a single event rule and have multiple targets. Another example could be maybe attaching a Lambda function to this also, that also reacts based on that, maybe sends notification to Slack, or also creates another EC2 instance because one is being terminated. When we're done with this configuration, the next thing is to click on Create to create that event rule. If there are any errors, it will show us, but there's pretty much no errors here and here, and that is our event rule that has been created. So you can see there are pretty much other event rules here, but this is the one we just created, and it's going to continue to check our AWS account for any Spot instance that is about to be terminated before it gets terminated and send us a notification. Thank you.